Welcome into a special mock draft Monday here on HQ. I'm your host, Joe Musso, assuming the role of pseudo commissioner, let's say, overwhelmed with power right now. I am joined by Ryan Wilson, Brady Quinn, and Rick Spielman, our experts. Going to rotate you through the first round here, determining the future of your franchise. But before we put them on the clock, a quick look at the current odds to go number one. News of Bryce Young's Tuesday visit to Carolina, perhaps moving the needle a bit here, as the Heisman Award winner again represents the shortest odds to head to Carolina. Young emerged early as the favorite to go at one, but soon after, Chicago made that dance partner trade to Charm City. C.J. Stroud then assumed the top spot, but here we are, less than 3 weeks till draft day, with the mathematical representation of uncertainty in front of our eyes. And that responsibility now lies on the shoulders of one Ryan Wilson with the first pick, if I may. Ryan, Carolina, who are we going with?
So these odds are interesting, Joe, because when we did the With the First Pick podcast this afternoon, Rick and I, they were neck and neck, C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. And now we see Bryce as the favorite, which is curious. I'm not going to overthink it, Brady and Rick. I'm taking Bryce Young. Yes, we know Frank Reich has said in the past that he likes his quarterbacks to be taller and mobile. Guess what? Bryce Young is incredibly mobile. He just ain't tall. He's 5'10 and 1/8. He weighed 204 at the combine. There's a 0% chance he plays at 204 unless he stays on the Ryan Wilson eating plan. Otherwise, I'm taking him in Carolina. You have Frank Reich. You have Jim Caldwell. You have new offensive coordinator Thomas Brown. You have a lot of pieces in place to help him to succeed, and I feel like he'll be more QB ready to go day one than any other quarterback, and I like C.J. Stroud a lot.
That chicken parm sandwich did look good there, Ryan.
Yes.
That takes us to the second overall pick. The Houston Texans, also in need of quarterback help with Bryce Young off the board. Rick Spielman, we will go your way. Second overall pick goes to who?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed. Ryan changed his mind, and because he's been saying C.J. Stroud this whole time. But I'm happy for the consolation prize. I need a franchise quarterback. I'm with the Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud falls into my lap. I believe he's one of the most, if not the most, accurate passer in this draft. He has size. You've seen his athleticism in the Georgia game. I wish we would have seen it all year, but he showed that he can do it. He's had a great pre-draft process, starting at the combine, the way he threw, all the way up through his pro day that me and Ryan were able to attend. Excellent vision down the field, excellent touch down the field. I got my franchise quarterback, and I'm happy to walk away with C.J. Stroud.
All right, no surprise there. 1 and 2, Young and Stroud. Will be some permutation of those two. And then at 3, the Arizona Cardinals, Brady Quinn, have to feel like they're picking first overall, not shopping for a quarterback. Their pick of wherever they want to go for a position player here. Brady, where do they go at number 3?
Well, I'll tell you this much. Joe, I listened to a lot of calls and called some potential teams who I thought would be trade partners. I called Ryan Wilson, who's got the Indianapolis Colts. I called Rick Spielman, who's not only picking for the Seattle Seahawks later on, but also the Tennessee Titans. In the case of Ryan, there's a lot of loud music. Couldn't really hear anything what was going on in the background. I think Jim Irsay's band was playing. And then in talking to Rick, all he was able to offer from trading up all the way at 11 to number 3 was a 6th-round pick and a bag of chips. So clearly I couldn't accept that offer. And with the miscommunication or lack thereof with Ryan, I went ahead to have to make the pick. So I took the outstanding edge rusher out of Alabama, Will Anderson. I view him as just a bulletproof prospect. It's a need for Arizona. But when it comes down to it, he's going to be a day one impact player for Arizona, a guy that you can really rely on, I think, for the next decade. So Will Anderson Jr. is the pick there for Arizona after not being able to trade out and accumulate some more picks with the other cheap general managers in this draft.
All right, I'm going to put a pause on the clock right here because I do want the analysts to step back in. Will Anderson, first non-quarterback name you see being called, Ryan?
Yeah, and again, Rick and I talked about this morning on With the First Pick. And by the way, I didn't know Brady hired a bit writer. He's making jokes here, so I didn't get that memo. Next mock draft, Brady, I'm going to have my own joke writer as well. Maybe it'll be Joe Musso. But Will Anderson is the easy pick, and Rick has talked about this a ton. Rick worked with the Alabama players in the fall, so he knows Will Anderson as well as anyone, probably better than some of the teams that have had to talk with him in this pre-draft process. And the takeaway is he loves football. He's laser focused on football. He loves his family. And if you're the Cardinals, if you're Brady Quinn making that pick, the new GM, the new head coach, there are no red flags, no off-field issues to worry about. This is as easy a pick as Aiden Hutchinson was last year, as Chase Young was coming out a few years ago, as the Bosa brothers were coming out when they were top 5 picks, and understandably so based on their college tape. Same thing with Will Anderson.
All right, roll the clock. You are back on the draft board here. Ryan Wilson at number 4, the Indianapolis Colts for, I believe, the 8th consecutive season. We'll have a different starting quarterback on week one, taking that first snap? Is it going to be someone that they draft here in the first round?
They are going to draft someone here in the first round. They should not play this person in week one. It should be a Gardner Minshew type situation if you take this player and this player. Enough of the suspense. Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. And here's the thinking. He is freakishly athletic. You can see him here. He's 6'4" and change, 240-ish, ran in the 4.4s, and he routinely outran everyone to the end zone. The issue isn't the physical skills. The issue is the lack of experience at quarterback. Rick and I were at his pro day in Gainesville about 10 days ago, and sweet mercy alive, it was fun to see that in person. Shane Steichen is the new head coach in Indianapolis. He was the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia on that Super Bowl run. He and Jalen Carter did a lot of good things together over the course of just a handful of seasons, and you hope that's the progression you see from Anthony Richardson. Not weeks 1 through 8 of his rookie season, probably weeks 9 through the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. If everything goes to plan, you have to be patient. And if Jim Irsay can quit playing the crazy music that Brady heard on the phone call and focus on letting his quarterback become a better quarterback, I think this has a chance to be a really special pick.
You know, guys, there are a number of teams here in the first round, early in the first round, who threaded that needle through a deal and have an early first-round pick and remain competitive a year ago. The Seattle Seahawks opening some eyes. Rick Spielman, you're on the clock here at number 6 with the Seahawks by way of Denver. Who are you going with?
Yeah, well, as the fans used to say in Minnesota, I would have traded my mother for a 7th-round pick. So if Brady would have asked for my mother, we would have been able to get the deal done when he was on the clock. But he didn't do enough research to understand that I would throw my mother in it just to move. I'm going to go with Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
He's the most talented defensive player in this draft, maybe the most talented player in this draft when he plays hard. Now you have all the red flags that are going up that are alerted. You have the off issue with the tragedy of 2 people losing their lives in a car crash. You have him overweight at his pro day. You have him saying that he will not interview with anyone outside the top 10. Well, I'm inside the top 10. I spend time with this kid. I watch him on tape. There's not a more dominant defensive tackle, under tackle, that has come out in a long time than this kid. And if you can get this kid right, push all his buttons, you got a perennial Pro Bowler in Seattle. Pete Carroll, John Schneider do a phenomenal job with guys with some character issues, as they like to say, celebrate their uniqueness. They'll get to this kid. They'll make him a Pro Bowler, and he, to me, is the best player in this draft when he's right.
All right, so that is Carter at 5 to Seattle, not 6. I misspoke a moment ago. Don't want to dock you a pick here, Rick. That will only come via tampering on some level. We will get there when we get there, but first let's take a look at those top 5 picks. And you best not miss when you're picking this early in the draft. 3 of our top 4 picks in this mega mock, quarterbacks. And if history tells us anything, somebody's going to miss. You've also got 2 Alabama products there in your top 3 to the surprise of no one. And big game experience also of value. 4 of the top 5 having played in the college football playoff. Straight ahead. We are back on HQ as our mock draft special rolls on. Taking a look at picks 6 through 10. Teams still angling for franchise-altering talent right here with this prime real estate occupied by only one playoff team, NFC champions. Sitting at 10 following a 2022 pick swap where the Birds surrendered a pair of top 20 picks in exchange for some short-term roster flexibility and long-term potential. This year, perhaps potential realized. Back on the clock with Brady Quinn, BQ, the Lions, current favorites to win the NFC North and maybe just a couple pieces away from making some real noise, dare I say. Where are you taking them here at 6?
Well, they've got to improve their defense. They were 32nd in the league. Last time I checked, Rick, doesn't get much worse than that, right, in the NFL? And so they got to improve their defense. They were 30th against the pass. And one way you do that, you find ways of applying pressure. You take Aiden Hutchinson a year ago, had a great rookie season. I'm going to go with who I feel like is the second best edge rusher in this year's draft class. That's Tyree Wilson at Texas Tech. That's 6'6", 270-pound frame. He's got a lot of upside and ability, I think, to be a potential game wrecker. You put him opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. I think both those guys are going to be able to eat and be able to improve that defense in a vast way. So I like Tyree Wilson here. I think he makes a lot of sense for the Detroit Lions that, let me just not foreshadow. Let me foreshadow something later on. They need a lot of help on defense. And so you can imagine where the rest of this draft could be going for the Lions this year.
All right, so that's how Brady sees it at 6. At number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders, who always present some sort of curveball over the years, over the different front offices that have taken the role there. But we're looking at them at 7. We're also looking at you, Ryan Wilson, in that role. Who are you taking here with Vegas? Are you going to surprise us? Big splash? Something very much in that Raiders vein?
Well, you tell me, and we'll see. And if I had to guess, working with Rick Spielman the last 3 months, he's going to hate this pick. But
okay,
let's find out together. Ideally, they would get a quarterback. They have Jimmy Garoppolo on a 3-year deal. He is basically a bridge quarterback at this point in his career. But Will Levis is not that guy, and that's just reality. He may go here in this range. I've heard the Raiders do not like him enough to take him at 7. Instead, they're going to focus on a defense that has been pretty bad in recent years, and they're going with Lucas Van Ness, defensive lineman out of Iowa. And you might say to yourself, Joe, Lucas Van Ness, let me see, he hasn't started one game in his college career. You would be correct. But when you talk to people around the league, here's what you hear. Because I watched him during the fall, and I thought, okay, he should probably come back to school, and we'll see where we are next year. He came out. He's 6'4" and 6'8", 272, 11-inch hands. He has huge mitts, 34-inch arms, which is left tackle length arms, and he ran at 4.58. And that athleticism and that frame, which can add about 10 to 15 pounds when you talk to folks around the league, is what is so enticing. He's quick off the snap. He's incredibly strong. And I think his best football is going to be ahead of him when a defensive line coach gets their hands on him, and he can line up over the tackle. He can line up reduced inside, and that versatility also makes him intriguing in Las Vegas, where they have Chandler Jones, who's 33, didn't have a great season. They have Max Crosby, who is Max Crosby, but they need some help on the interior of that defensive line. I think Van Ness gives you that versatility.
All right, so we're drooling over the measurables. Do you share in that point of view, Rick Spielman? I know he alluded to maybe your chagrin offered to this pick. Are you on the same page here, or are you standing pat with your question marks around more than just the measurables?
No, this is a prime example of, if I heard him correctly, Ryan Wilson said this kid should go back to school. Now he has him going in the top 10. So we are creating monsters this time of year. Is he a good football player? Yes. Does he have a huge upside? Yes. Is he a top 10 pick? Absolutely not. And if you don't want to go with a quarterback, Will Levis, because you don't like him, because I don't like him either, then go with an offensive lineman. You have Johnson, you have Skoronski, you have Broderick Jones, you have all these guys that is a desperate need up front to help whoever quarterback, Garoppolo, and if they do get a young quarterback down the road. But go with offensive line here because they're going to go fast. And don't take a guy that you said in the fall should go back to school.
Vegas reaching on a defensive line talent? Who would have thought? Thanks for playing the part, Ryan Wilson. Let's move on to number 8, Atlanta Falcons on the clock in the form of Rick Spielman. Rick, who's Atlanta going with? Many needs across the field.
Am I playing the part of Atlanta now? Because he wasn't playing a part. He was actually serious when he took Van Ness.
Yes, we would like you to play the part of Atlanta.
General manager and take a need here. I'm going to go with the best corner in the draft to put across from A.J. Terrell, and that's Gonzalez, Christian Gonzalez. He transferred from Colorado, had a great season out at Oregon. No question about his physical traits. He can play press man. The one question that everybody had was his ball skills, and he proved this year at Oregon that he can turn, look back, and locate the ball. I think he ended up with 4 interceptions. To see him have another pick 6 here. This guy has all the tools to be a shutdown quarter, can fit in any scheme, and him next to A.J. Terrell would be an ideal combination in their secondary.
All right, so that's where Atlanta is looking at number 8. I will preface this next pick by saying there are a lot of Chicago Bears fans on the Venn diagram that crosses over with Brady Quinn fans. So it's just a mock draft. There's not a whole lot of pressure, but a whole lot of people are going to hear this. At number 9, Brady, who do the Bears go with?
Well, I think they saw or found out a lot about their quarterback, Justin Fields, this past season. And I think you got to start to build around him, trading out of the first overall pick like they did to be able to accumulate more picks. But even a player like DJ Moore adds to a group now of pass catchers with Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. So you're pretty good there, but you got to improve the offensive line play. And I love Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. I think he's got the prototypical size you're looking for. His athleticism is really what stands out to me. I think he'd be a great scheme fit for Chicago moving forward with what they'd like to do. And again, they need help desperately up front on the offensive line. So this is one of my favorite picks as far as the ability to be able to put a player in that I think will be a day one starter and that blindside left tackle for Justin Fields for quite some period of time. So again, Paris Johnson out of Ohio State's the pick.
One of Brady's favorite picks and one of mine as well. At number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles. Ryan Wilson, you played the role for us here. Not too many times. You're a few plays away from a Lombardi trophy, and you're picking at number 10 here. How are you taking advantage of that opportunity?
Again, this will probably be considered a troll pick if you're talking to Rick Spielman about this, and he takes this stuff very seriously, as you heard just a moment ago when he was talking about the Falcons. Look, I'm sitting at 10. You need help at cornerback. I could take a Devin Witherspoon here, and it would not be overdrafting him. We need defensive line help, especially in the interior. There's no one worth it at this point after Jalen Carter. Probably have to wait till the bottom of the first round and maybe get it with our second first-round pick. I'm going to solve some problems, some immediate problems, Joe, and I'm taking a running back. Miles Sanders is gone. There isn't a ton of depth at the running back position. I'm going with Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. And here's what you might be saying to yourself. Listen, the Eagles also pick at 30. Why not get a running back there? Well, here are the teams between them and that 30th pick who might very well take Bijan Robinson. The Patriots, the Bucks, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, and the Bengals. And if you're at all concerned about those teams taking this player and you really like Bijan Robinson to come in and help your team immediately, which is what he would do, then I think you think about taking him here. Now, Howie Roseman has been known to trade down, so maybe you trade down 5 or 6 spots and still have an opportunity to get him. But since there are no trades, because I don't answer the phone when Brady calls about trades, I'm taking Bijan Robinson at 10.
There have been just 4 running backs drafted in the top 10 in the last decade. They go by Barkley, Zeke, Fournette, and Gurley. Robinson would be number 5. Just a nice wry smile
Could have
across
done without
the face
that
of,
stat, by the way.
Yeah, I figured we'd situate it historically. Robinson at 10 to Philly is how our Ryan Wilson is picking it. Here's a look at where they went 6 through 10. Defensive help for a trio of teams. They're dying for playoff success. Justin Fields getting his tackle, and it comes from his program. And at 10, the Birds supplementing the loss of Miles Sanders, let's say, with a Longhorn back. Next up, plenty of Premier already off the board means strategies could vary. We broaden our scope with Tennessee on the clock after a quick break. Back on HQ, where Mock Draft Monday continues as we sink our teeth into the meat of round 1. Houston set to hand in their second card of the draft already. Detroit and Seattle as well. The Jets perhaps putting a piece around their phantom quarterback. And can the Pats maybe pick their way out of purgatory? Ryan Wilson, Brady Quinn, Rick Spielman back in the mix. I'm Joe Musso, just happy not to be booed yet here as our pseudo-commissioner. Full commercial break to mull the future of the Tennessee Titans here, Rick. Titans, number of key free agency departures at number 11. What need do they address?
Yeah, they have to address the offensive line. That's the only way they're going to get better. Now, they signed Andre Dillard at left tackle. I don't believe he's the left answer, or the left tackle answer. I had a real tough decision between here, taking Peter Skoronski or Broderick Jones, who I think has the highest upside out of any offensive lineman in this year's draft. But I went with Skoronski. Ram Cawthorn, first-year GM. This is a for sure pick. He's a left tackle. Everybody's knocking on him in short arms, but he has excellent feet, athletic skills, plays with strength, pace, and balance. Every once in a while, he gets bulled and overrun. But this guy is the most pure, technical, sound offensive lineman in this year's draft. When you see him on pulls, when you see him finish blocks, he's a no-brainer. I see him going inside to be a guard, similar to what Brandon Scherf did a few years ago from Iowa. Became a perennial Pro Bowler, and I've seen the same type of skill set here with Skoronski.
All right, so it's Skoronski at 11 to the Tennessee Titans. At number 12, the Houston Texans will make their second pick of the draft. That belongs to Brady Quinn. Brady, where are we heading?
They need some playmakers on this offense. And obviously, you drafted a quarterback with your number 2 overall pick with C.J. Stroud, in my opinion, the most accurate quarterback in this draft class. And so could have went with a teammate with Jackson Smith and Jigba here. That might make some sense. I'm sure after C.J. Stroud gets selected and this 12th pick comes around, he'll probably be lobbying everyone within the Houston Texans organization, but I'm not going that direction. I'm going with Quentin Johnston, and the reason being is they need someone who can take the top off of a defense, a bigger body frame, who really, I think, will stand out. And I think he's just really touching on the beginning of his ability as a wide receiver and what he could be at the next level. So, look, he's a Temple High School product in Temple, Texas. That's not too far from Houston. Obviously playing his football there at TCU, had a huge year this year. I think he could be that number 1 wide receiver that the Houston Texans are desperately looking for to go along with their quarterback, their franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud.
All right, hands will be on phones here at number 13 if we don't get news here in the next 3 weeks. I prefaced by saying maybe you put a piece around your quarterback who's currently a Green Bay Packer, and if that Green Bay Packer is a New York Jet, maybe this pick does not belong to New York. But right now, at number 13, What are we doing with New York here, Ryan?
This doesn't happen often in the course of the draft, Joe, but I'm going to ask the commissioner a question. Do you think that the Jets are going to get Aaron Rodgers?
If they do, I don't think they have that pick. That sounds like the crux of the situation right now.
Yeah, I can tell you guys, I spoke to Joe upstairs. He said no. He said that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to New York. So sorry, producer Lucas. That point aside, I'm not taking Will Levis here. Fingers crossed that Aaron Rodgers shows up. Either way, I'm going with Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. And you might say, well, they drafted Mekhi Becton. Mekhi Becton hasn't worked out. You hope he gets healthy. You hope he's ready to go. They do have Dwayne Brown, but he's closer to 40 than he is to 30. He is a short-term solution. He's not a long-term solution. They also have Max Mitchell, who they have high hopes for. But here's the thing with Broderick Jones. For the last 3 years of his college career, he's gone against some of the best athletes on planet Earth. Most of those played on defense. Most of those guys went in the first round in last year's draft, and a few didn't go in the first round in this year's draft. He actually told us at the Combine that he didn't trust himself early in his career at Georgia because he was getting beat every single play in practice. But as Mike Tomlin likes to say, iron sharpens iron, and he is a better player for it. Rick talks about it all the time on the podcast. His best football is ahead of him. He's still pretty raw, but he's incredibly athletic. He has long arms. He moves his feet well, and that fills a huge need in New York, whether Aaron Rodgers is there or not, Joe.
I'm docking you a second rounder, just for airing me out, you know?
Yeah.
Keep an eye on the mail tomorrow. That's all I'm saying. Let's move on here to number 14. That belongs to Rick Spielman and the New England Patriots, who I would never question Bill Belichick, but past drafts these last couple of years maybe lacking a little bit of vision, not Belichickian in the way he's gone about it. Rick, how are you going about it here at 14?
Well, Commissioner, don't forget to dock him a $100,000 fine if you're going to take a draft pick away. There's always a fine involved.
He's good
when
for
you
it.
take a draft pick. So
Thanks, Rick.
he can afford it. Out of any what's on this set, he's the one who can afford it for sure. So I'm going to continue this run on linebackers. And New England could go a lot of different directions. But if you look, Isaiah Wynn did not produce for them, former first-round pick out of Georgia. They signed Riley Reif, who used to be a very good player. He's long in the tooth. He's their starting right tackle right now, and he's not going to be good enough. So in order to help Mac Jones, in order to help the run game, I'm going to go with Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee. If you watch him play left tackle as a junior, he wasn't very good. But this year, he made one of the biggest jumps out of anyone I've seen on the offensive line. When you watch this Alabama game, he did eat Will Smith's lunch, or Will Anderson's lunch. He had a great game against him. He seemed to rise to this competition every time he stepped up and had to play. He's big, strong, physical. He's a right tackle. Some may see him a guard, but I see him as a starting right tackle. Day one starter when he walks in New England. This was a no-brainer for me.
It's a game of rush the guy, protect the guy, and we've seen a lot of those two edge rushers and offensive lines go here early. We are now right in the middle of this first round, and that's where we find the Green Bay Packers in the form of Brady Quinn. Where's Green Bay going here with a lot of question marks around their franchise right now regarding what the immediate future looks like, BQ?
Yeah, I mean, I'm making this assumption that, you know, the Green Bay Packers are moving on from Aaron Rodgers. He will be with the New York Jets. As Joe Douglas keeps saying, that's really what Jets fans should anticipate. So given that you've now got a more youthful, younger quarterback, let's just call him inexperienced, in Jordan Love, he's going to need a little bit of help. We saw Christian Watson really start to emerge at the halfway point of last season and finishing strong last year. But the tight end position, is the one I'm looking at. Robert Tonyan's a free agent. Mercedes Lewis isn't there anymore. They need to find that reliable, a safety blanket, if you will. And Michael Mayer, to me, out of Notre Dame, is the best tight end in the draft. He makes a lot of sense for the Green Bay Packers here, and especially for Jordan Love as he tries to get his feet underneath him as the potential franchise quarterback for the Packers for the future.
Rick, there have been some assessment concerns in terms of, athleticism, but Mayer has passed every test you could put in front of him, both at Notre Dame and here in the pre-draft. Do you like this pick here at number 15?
Absolutely not. This is a homer all the way by Brady Quinn. Homer. No, he's a good football player. He's not the most athletic tight end there is. He's got excellent hands. He's always catching in contested situations, but he's always going to be in contested situations, so you might as well get good at it. If I had to choose, I would have went with the defensive safety here, Brian Branch. There's a lot more tight ends that you can swing back in the second round and get that I think is a very deep tight end class. I know the free safety or the strong safety or any safety, it's not very deep at all. So they have a need at safety too. And when I'm looking at my draft board and I see, hey, I can swing and get a tight end later in the second round or my second time I'm coming through this, I got to go get a safety now because I have Brian Branch equal in ability to Michael Mayer, and I've got to take the safety because there's not a lot left after him.
That's a sound response or criticism of the pick. Completely understand that. To me, I think you look at some.
Not criticism. I respect everything you do there. Right,
no,
Ryan?
No, I mean, to your point, though, the safety position, it's a very thin class, at least as far as where Branch stands amongst everyone else. So there is some scarcity there that would make some sense. I didn't feel like it was an overall need for this particular roster. I actually was contemplating more offensive line. Bakhtiari's getting up there in age. That would be a concern for me moving forward. How much he's going to be able to play, how well he's going to be able to play, and just trying to shore up the protection for Jordan Love. But to me, it's more of a pick of got to find a way of helping to improve Jordan Love, either with some sort of playmaker, catching the football, or someone helping to protect him. That was more my thought process here.
All right, the official pick, Michael Mayer there at number 15. We move to 16, the Commanders. A lot of the conversation around this franchise has been up in the big office as of late. Ryan Wilson, who are you going with here as their pseudo GM?
Well, they're shocked to see Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois, still on the board. So that's the direction they're rolling. It's an easy selection because they have Benjamin St. Juste, who's a good young player. He's not great. They have Kendall Fuller, who's a little long in the tooth, to use the phrase that Rick likes to use, and he's an average player, average plus. Devin Witherspoon is an absolute baller. 6'1", weighed 185 last week, ran 4.4 reportedly. We haven't seen the footage, so we'll just go on what we've been told. But he plays that fast. You can see him here, whether he's 180, 185. He's going to run through players. That was the first play of the Indiana game there. And that young man, number 2, had something to think about for the rest of that afternoon. I think this is a pretty easy pick. And I just want to point something out, Brady and Joe. When Rick makes his pick, look in the background over his left shoulder. There's a photograph of him and his brother. And Rick, you have great hair. We know that. I didn't know you had that mustache. I love the mustache. That's the first time I've seen that picture so closely.
That was back in the day when I was actually a pretty good camp body. Never was good enough to make it, but I'd at least run through a wall, try to give the offense a good look as a linebacker. That's why I had 94.
A pretty good camp body. I'll be using that one this fall. We appreciate
Rick,
that peek here into the Spielman household.
Mustache. Bring the mustache back, Rick. That was the whole point of the comment. He wants you to grow a mustache.
I think maybe we take a look at the duster this fall as well. Let's get back here to the draft at number 17. The Pittsburgh Steelers go to Rick Spielman and his mustache. I'm not sure which one will be making the pick.
Yeah, the mustache is retired. This is like a no-brainer for me. How can you have a guy like Joey Porter Jr., cornerback from Penn State fall? His dad played here. He's a legacy, legend, whatever you want to call him. They signed Patrick Peterson. He's long in the tooth. He will be a stopgap guy for a year. They also signed another cornerback, Levi Wallace from Buffalo. But when you look at Joey Porter Jr., I think he can fit in any scheme. He's best in press coverage. He's a physical corner now, maybe the most physical corner in this draft. He's going to jam receivers at the line of scrimmage. He has excellent ball skills. He's competitive and strong at the point. You're going to know he's on the field. And when he went against Marvin Harrison Jr. this year, I thought he did the best job out of any corner against him to try to keep him under control. So this was a no-brainer pick for me. I got Joey Porter Jr. His dad's a legacy at my organization, and now his son's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch him here at the next level. It's Pittsburgh at 17 for Porter Jr. And I like the way this next one lines up because we've got Brady Quinn as the Detroit Lions once again. Brady, you went with linebacker at number 6. Where are you going here at number 18?
Edge rusher at number 6 with Tyree Wilson.
Thank you, yes.
So I'm going to go with cornerback here. And again, just going back to the initial point that I made, this was the worst defense in the league last year, 30th against the pass. You got to find edge rushers. You got to find guys to cover. Deonte Banks out of Maryland seems to make a lot of sense for me. He's one of the fastest players in this year's draft class. He's got good length to him, too. I think he'd be a good scheme fit and would be suited up well opposite of Jeff Okudah for the Detroit Lions. And so I think both with the 6th overall pick and Tyree Wilson, and now looking at the 18th overall pick with Deonte Banks, the Detroit Lions just got a lot better and some young budding stars, I think, now on their defense in this first round.
All right, next up at number 19, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is that point of the draft, Ryan, where teams start looking at who's just beyond them, what names are going to be there the next time we're up there. I know you're always sort of going through that process, but quarterback specific here, that's where you have your eyes at number 19.
Yeah, just until a few weeks ago, it was just Kyle Trask on the roster, Joe, and that was it at the quarterback position. They signed Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is not a long-term solution. Had a nice little run with the Rams. last season, but he started with the Panthers, and that at times was hard to watch. Not entirely his fault, but the point remains, if you're sitting here at 19 and some guy named Will Levis is still hanging around, you're probably thinking long and hard about it. Now, this organization is retooling, arguably rebuilding. Will Levis, in terms of the pre-draft process, probably ranks 4th behind the players we've been talking about and who've already been drafted. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and Anthony Richardson. Rick and I were at all 4 of these pro days, and of the 4, we ranked Will Levis as 4th. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't as good as the other quarterbacks. And there are issues about his ability to get through reads. His ability, he's tough. There's no doubt about that. Incredibly tough. Some of his interviews weren't great. Not that he was a bad person, just there wasn't the right fit there. And I think that's part of the reason he's falling out of the top 15 as we sit here. So if you're here at 19, you get the 5th-year option. You don't have to rush him onto the field. You can build around him, hopefully, and maybe you catch lightning in a bottle and get a truly special player with a ton of physical skills.
He quite literally did the underwear Olympics thing here, Levis, during this pre-draft process. Brady Quinn, the measurables are one thing. What do you make of this pick here? Quarterback going here at number 19 to Tampa in the form of Will Levis.
Well, I think it makes some sense too, and especially for a guy who at times has been mocked in the top 10 of this draft, but could potentially fall based on what you want to listen to and then what you think is going to happen. If you're Tampa Bay, you'd be delighted the fact that you don't have to trade up, don't have to do anything. He's going to fall right there in your lap, and he could be your franchise quarterback of the future. And you do have a guy in Baker Mayfield who could start the season, allow Will Levis to kind of grow into that system, to get more comfortable with an NFL defense, an NFL offense, everything else that he's going to have to deal with. Now, he has had a little bit of experience in that at Kentucky, given Liam Cohen and Rich Scangarello as his offensive coordinators. But again, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not so sure he drops this far, but we'll see. I mean, again, Ryan passed on him at the number 4 pick, took Anthony Richardson instead. And then I believe was it Ryan again who had the Las Vegas Raiders also said they weren't interested. I mean, I guess he's all in on Jimmy G, but I have a hard time believing that you should listen to everything that you hear this time of the year. Guys like Rick Spielman, who used to be in that seat, they're lying to your face all the time. You know, I've heard an old quote. You know how I know you're lying? Your lips are moving. And that's what Rick Spielman used to do during this time of year.
2 truths and a lie here as we round out the top 20 of the draft. One last pick here before we take a quick break, and that's, again, the Seattle Seahawks in the form of Rick Spielman. Rick, number 5, you went with Carter, threw caution to the wind there in some ways. What are we doubling back with here at number 20?
Yeah, well, don't forget, Brady, Ryan Wilson's in love with Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett to pass up Will Levis, too, there. So there were plenty of opportunities for Ryan. So, yeah, but that's fine, Ryan. You go ahead and sleep well tonight with your quarterback selection. This one's another no-brainer for me.
Okay.
I got Jalen Carter, who to me is the most dominant defensive player inside that I've seen in a long time, like I mentioned earlier. Now I come back and get an edge rusher, Myles Murphy from Clemson. I can't believe he's still on the board. He is long. He is fast. He still needs some technique work, but he plays hard. He can run and chase the quarterback. He has a feel for where the quarterback is in the pocket. And this guy has tremendous upside as well. Reminded me a little of Danielle Hunter when we took him, but we didn't get him to the 3rd round. I think this guy ran 4.5 down at his pro day. When he did run, he wasn't able to work out at the combine. So that answered that question. He's a great young man. When we sat there and interviewed him, very intelligent, almost maybe too smart to be a football player. But this guy's going to be a very good player. He's going to take some time, but he's going to give Seattle an edge rusher that they desperately need.
You know, they said that was my problem.
I heard that as well. That was a scout report on you. By the way,
too much up here.
Can I point out quickly that Rick leads the league in laughing at his own jokes? Just pay attention to that because that's a thing.
Okay. When we laugh amongst friends. Let's take a look at those picks once again, 11 through 20 here, recapping the heart of round 1. And you know, it's always interesting to look at classes a year over. Consider the fact that Will Levis at 19 represents the 4th quarterback off the board in this mock last year. QB1, didn't hear his name called until 1 pick later. Kenny Pickett going 20 to Pittsburgh. Supply and demand economy, I guess. When we return, we round out day 1 on Mock Draft Monday. Taking a look at the tail end of the 2023 NFL Draft, 21 through 31. And remember, only 31 picks in this year's first round after Miami was docked their pick by the league after an investigation into the team revealed that it violated league policies, quote, pertaining to the integrity of the game, end quote. Over this stretch, a number of contenders looking for what they feel could be that missing piece to a championship formula. back in the mix with the guys, and we're right to it at number 21 with the Los Angeles Chargers, that pick belonging to Brady Quinn. Brady, where are we heading?
We've got to figure out a way to stop the run if you're the Los Angeles Chargers. Bottom line is they were 32nd in yards per attempt last year. Had the opportunity to call a game when they're taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And what do you think the San Francisco 49ers did? Ran it right down their throats. And that's a big hole right now in their defense. You go find a big run stuffer. Not necessarily the best year for it, but one of the guys that's really intriguing to me is Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. Played in multiple spots throughout the defensive front. He's 6'3", 337 pounds. And this guy's a dancing bear, extremely athletic for that size. And he's the type of guy that's a 3-down defensive tackle. He can stay on the field all 3 downs and play an impact too in the passing game. So if you're the Los Angeles Chargers, they got to find a way of improving that defensive front and stop the run. They were pitiful last year.
I'm told that Rick Spielman has a word here on Smith. Rick, I would ask you if you like the pick here, but I've asked you that twice, and I know your answer. Tell me why you don't like the pick.
Reach. He's reaching. No, it's fine, Brady. I can see they do need help at defensive tackle. But you look at Khalil Mack, how old is he? You have Smith from Georgia on the board. And then look at the receivers. Keenan Allen's 31 years old. Mike Williams is good, but he's getting long in the tooth. He's hurt all the time. And you are from Ohio. And how can you leave an Ohio State guy still on the same board that apparently you don't even have him on your board? Jackson Smith and Jigba, to me, would be the ideal pick for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Okay. Well,
get another playmaker for the
first off,
quarterback.
You can find value there as second, third-round pick with wide receivers. You know, it's not like they have to take a first-round draft pick in order to make it work. I think there's other guys who they'll be able to plug in and play and get some value out of it. So, to me, Mozzie Smith is a rare talent. You know, outside of him, I think you got the guy out of Baylor. Yeah, Brian Bursey. That's about it.
The big boards are well developed, if you cannot tell, and our guys have their points of view. We are stuck on some of those names at some of those numbers. Let's get to the next number, which is 22, the Baltimore Ravens, who, I don't know if you could liken it to trying to get an ex to come back and doing everything you can on the Instagram story. You go get Odell, a new haircut, you go get the nails, everything you need to do to just lure back that lover that is Lamar Jackson. Are we tending to that at all here at 22?
I'm surprised you didn't go the rent the Ferrari in the driveway, take some Instagram pictures with it, knowing that you have to return it in Odell Beckham.
Also useful.
And it might be the Tom Selleck version of the Ferrari.
Speaking of mustaches.
Yeah, speaking of mustaches, let's keep this thing going. Here's the thing. So we did this mock draft mentally. I was going to take Smith and Jigba here had he been available. He was, even before the Odell Beckham news broke. They've also signed Nelson Aguilar. It doesn't really matter because this isn't the same Odell Beckham we've seen going back to 2014. Nelson Aguilar, former first-round pick, hasn't really played like a first-round pick. He's more of a complimentary player. Jackson Smith and Jigba is automatic offense, and all you have to do is watch him play. Unfortunately, he only caught 5 passes last season because of a hamstring injury, but he had the fastest 3-cone, the fastest short shuttle of all the wide receivers, of all the athletes at the combine. He ran a 4.5 at the pro day that Rick and I attended, and as Rick said at the time, that's fast enough. And again, short area quickness is off the boards among some of the best. And we talked to Garrett Wilson and C.J. Stroud both in Phoenix at the Super Bowl, and both told us on that 2021 team that had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison II, Jackson Smith and Jigba was the best player. So I think he's a great fit in Baltimore to give them that wide receiver they've been lacking for what feels like decades now.
National name recognition there, too, with Smith and Jigba. It's going to be the name that, if we are approaching the 22nd pick, everybody's going to be saying Smith and Jigba still on the board. There he goes at 22 to Ryan Wilson. This next one, I'm just going to say it and then get out of the way. Minnesota Vikings, Rick Spielman, 23. Where are we going?
Yeah, bring it on, boys, because I'm going to go quarterback here. Kirk Cousins, they didn't extend him. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Hendon Hooker, to me, has been rising through this pre-draft process. I know he's 25. I know he's coming off an ACL. But this kid, and after me and Ryan interviewed him at the Combine on the stage, being around him, hearing all the great things about him, this kid reminds me so much of Teddy Bridgewater when he came out of Louisville. And I think this kid's going to be a very good pro. He's got time to learn for a year, to recover from that ACL injury, then take over. This kid's smart, got everything intangible you're looking for in a quarterback. To me, I would take Hendon Hooker here.
As the commissioner, I have allowed Rick to offer his thoughts on previous quarterback picks, so it would be wrong if I did not offer Brady Quinn that same floor. Brady, how do you feel about this one?
Well, I think my question to Rick is, you know, do you potentially wait till the second round to get him? I mean, who at this point in time do you think's really eyeing him to take him, especially knowing that he's not going to be able to play probably this upcoming season because of the ACL? And again, I'm not saying that he's not necessarily warranting a first-round pick, but when we get to this point in time of the draft, I don't know that you've got a ton of teams that are looking at saying, hey, we got to find a quarterback here. This might be the right situation if there was one, but I also wonder if Minnesota doesn't feel like maybe they're not overdrafting him, but they're taking him in a spot where they could get him later on. How do you weigh that decision?
One key reason, he's going to probably have to redshirt for a year because of the ACL, and you're getting a fifth-year option, which is critical for a quarterback. That's why we moved up. We thought we'd get Teddy early in a second. We wanted to make sure we had the fifth-year option. That's why we moved back into the first, the trade with Seattle, to make sure we had that fifth-year option, especially on this position.
All right, guys, we are bleeding into the final quarter of this first round, where round one starts to look like round two starts to look like round one. What talent are we targeting 24th overall to Jacksonville, Brady Quinn?
Well, they got to improve their pass rush. They lose Arden Key. You find a player in Nolan Smith that just absolutely wowed everyone at the combine. He's a bit undersized, but very similar frame to what they had in Arden Key, and as far as an edge rusher. So Nolan Smith out of Georgia makes a lot of sense there. I think he could be an impact player for that defense, and they can move around. He can play in a bunch of different spots. So he's a player that I think makes sense for the Jacksonville Jaguars at this point in time as far as best player available at this point in the draft.
All right, so we are best available there at 24, at 25. Ryan Wilson, they scrambled the jets to get you out here to the Northeast. The black car is waiting downstairs for the general manager here of the New York Football Giants. Where are you taking us here at 25?
Center makes a lot of sense here, but you could argue that there are four centers that should probably go inside the top 50, maybe top 75. So perhaps you could circle back and get one of these centers and not overdraft them here. Instead, I'm going cornerback. They have Adoree Jackson. They have Cordell Flott penciled in as the starters. You could probably use some upgrades there. They have Aaron Robinson, the former day two pick from a few years ago, who has yet to pan out as a play-in, play-out starter. So I'm going with Emmanuel Forbes. And I first learned about Emmanuel Forbes, Joe, in the fall when Rick sent a text, because he was at this Mississippi State-Alabama game, and he said, this kid can play. Not a lot of talk about him. The talk has since commenced. 6 feet and 6'8" inches. He's only 166. That's a problem. You don't see a lot of 166 cornerbacks. Best ball skills in this draft class, and it may not even be close, And he, by the way, he ran a 4.35. So if you can get over the fact that he's not going to be wearing shorts on the field and you won't see his skinny little legs, and that he can do everything you want him to do at the cornerback position and probably play right away, I think this pick in this position makes a lot of sense for a guy that we haven't talked a lot about, primarily because he's undersized.
Yeah, just saw some tape. I mean, not afraid to stick his nose in there either. At 26, the Dallas Cowboys perpetually, Rick Spielman, one pick away. Make that pick for us.
Yeah, this one's an easy. This is a no-brainer. I can't believe Dalton Kincaid is still on the board here. They need a tight end. They went out and helped the receiver with the trade to Houston. They've done a lot this offseason. Some say running back, but running back's too early since Bijan Robinson is gone. So I go with Dalton Kincaid, who I think is the best receiving tight end in this draft class. Blocker, nah, okay. Receiver, pretty unique. He can go out and just watch the USC game. That really put him on the map. When you watch him through these other games, he is an excellent athlete. He's long. He can make off-target catches. He does everything. And the one thing that surprised me is that he is very athletic in his run after catch and can get extra yards, quick to get upfield, to elude defenders. I think he's the best pass-catching tight end. Dallas solves the number one need for them by taking this tight end.
All right, so we're tight end to Dallas at 26. At number 27, it'll be the Buffalo Bills and Brady Quinn. Brady, the window is open. Who's going to help them step through it, walk through it? I mean, really realize what we know these Buffalo Bills can be. What's the piece that they're looking for here at the tail end of round one?
To me, I think they need help on their offensive line. And the lasting memory I had of last season was they were getting pushed around by the Cincinnati Bengals. And so Osiris Torrance out of Florida makes a lot of sense for me. He's one of the better interior offensive linemen in this draft class. He can help out in the run blocking scheme, obviously protecting Josh Allen as well. But I think that's a bigger need than maybe people want to realize. But he's a massive human being that moves really well for his size. And I think if you look at up front their depth chart, look at their offensive line, that would be an upgrade from where they're at.
All right, so we are going with Osiris Torrance there at 27 to Buffalo at 28. The aforementioned Cincinnati Bengals in the form of Ryan Wilson. Ryan, are you gonna push around Brady Quinn? Is that, he said, the Bengals pushing around the Bills. Are you ready to? Yeah.
I think I would probably lose any sort of physical altercation with Brady Quinn. Just a hunch. But we'll check that out next time. I'll leave that to you, Joe. You can be my proxy for taking punches in the face from Brady. How about that?
I love you, not that much.
All right, what are the Bengals going to do?
Where are they going?
So Rick took Dalton Kincaid just a few picks ago at tight end. I'm going to double down and go back to the tight end well. I'm taking Sam Laporta, a guy we haven't talked a lot about during the draft process because he played at Iowa on a terrible, terrible offense. Maybe if it's 1957, the offense looks good. Not so much in 2022. But Sam Laporta has a chance to be a really special player. I'm talking 60, 70 catches per year once he gets going in the right offense. This feels like the right offense. 6'3" and 3/8, 245. He ran at 4.59. And again, what better weapon for a quarterback like Joe Burrow than someone in the middle of the field to allow Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and those players to do their thing. And Hayden Hurst is gone. They have Devin Asiasi. They brought in Irv Smith Jr., but I think Sam Laporta has a chance to come in and play right away over those guys who haven't quite yet lived up to what we thought they might be in the NFL.
That would be roughly 10% of our first round going tight end, and somewhere George Kittle and Travis Kelce are owed some money. Rick Spielman, you have a thought here on Laporta?
Yeah, I love him as a football player, but Mr. Wilson there made a critical mistake with Brian Branch technically still on the board in this mock. They lost a pretty good safety in Jesse Bates. How can you let that go by and not take Brian Branch? But he took Laporta, who's a good football player. He's the king of out routes since the quarterback play was so bad they could only throw out routes. But he's an underrated athlete. He's going to get stronger, but he's an excellent effort blocker. I think he's going to even get better at the NFL level. He's underrated after the catch. Some people I've talked to, I'm not making a monster out of him like we made a monster out of some of these guys who went a little early in the draft, but some think he's a poor man George Kittle.
All right. There's worse things to be than a poor man George Kittle, because eventually you become a rich man if you're anything like George Kittle. Rick, I'm coming right back to you here at number 29 with New Orleans. Where are you heading?
Yeah, well, my head's still spinning because I can't believe that Ryan didn't take Laporta, and then I still can't believe that Brady took Osiris Torrance at guard. So that's Zay Flowers is still there, and that probably would have been a better fit in my opinion. But I'm sitting here trying to make
we got a whole podcast for you, all right? This is Mock Draft Monday, Rick. We can get to it another time. At number 29, who are you going with in New Orleans?
New Orleans has to get a pass rusher, so I'm going with B.J. Ojulari. I think he's right down the street. He can drive over there and have a press conference on the night of the draft. They lost Davenport. They lost Ellis, who was an underrated pass rusher. So they do need pass rusher off the edge. This kid plays high energy, high motor. He's a second pass rusher off the board for me after Nolan Smith from Georgia. I thought about Will McDonald, but I went with Ojulari and the kid that's right outside of New Orleans.
All right, Ojulari to New Orleans, staying in town there at 29. Brady, in the penultimate pick of the first round, the Eagles coming up just short. Where do they go to try and get over the hump here, as they did lose some pieces as well in free agency?
Well, first, let me just make a pick if I was Rick Spielman in the spot. It'd be Brian Branch, because he keeps talking about him. And obviously, he doesn't have any ties back to Tuscaloosa. But that's not where I'm going with this one.
Okay.
I'm focusing on the offensive side of the ball. Even though Jason Kelce decided to come back for another year, it probably will be his last. And so I'm looking ahead and saying, if you really look at what's made this offense go, especially under Jalen Hurts, it's their offensive line. They're the best in the league last year. And so you draft someone like John Michael Schmitz at center, who will eventually be Jason Kelce's replacement. In the meantime, he adds some depth too. I know they have Cam Jurgens, but that allows them flexibility, either to use John Michael Schmitz or to use Jurgens in the future. And you're going to solidify the interior of that offensive line. So to me, he's the right fit for the right time for what the Eagles need to do, ensuring things up for Hurts.
Rick, can I get one rubber stamp? Can I get one rubber stamp here in the first round?
I can't do it, Brady.
You're
I'm
not
sorry.
signing off on it. He's not signing off on it.
I really am trying tonight to be nice. I'm trying to agree with you guys, but I just can't do it. You have Ryan Brzee on the board. You need definitely defensive tackles. I understand. I'm a huge Michael Schmidt fan. I think he's the best center in this draft. But you drafted a center last year that fits their scheme better in Jurgensen, from the kid from Nebraska. So I'm going defensive tackle here. I'm taking Brzee from Clemson.
All right, so Rick is also
submitting a pick. If you look at the roster, he's playing guard right now, because remember, they lost their right guard due to free agency. So again, it's going to be a hole.
defensive tackles. Guards are a lot easier to find than defensive tackles.
Be sure to download and subscribe to With the First Pick as we will solve all of these problems.
Really hard to find.
As we hurtle towards the top of the hour, one final pick to get to. Kansas City Chiefs. Last time they won a Super Bowl came back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 32nd overall. Who do they take 31st overall this time around, Ryan Wilson?
Joe, I'm smiling like a kid on Christmas because I see the frustration in Brady's face, having to deal with the exact same things that I deal with every day on this podcast. Brady, it means that Rick loves you when he gives you the business, so take it as it's intended. But I do appreciate that Brady is basically my offensive lineman. He's taken hit after hit to try to protect me, so thank you, Brady. I like that. So anyway, speaking of protecting Patrick Mahomes, for example, the Kansas City Chiefs, Anton Harrison, left tackle out of Oklahoma. We haven't talked about him hardly at all when we talk about these offensive linemen. Extremely athletic. I've talked to teams that say they think he's going to be sneaky, one of the top guys in this class among the offensive linemen. You see him throwing guys around here, and I think he has an opportunity to sneak into the first round for that very reason. Now, he's played mostly left tackle. They did sign Jawan Taylor, who they plan on moving to the left side, which seems interesting. Maybe you keep Jawan on the right, and you let Anton move into the left, and then you have the situation solved in a post-Orlando Brown world. And the Chiefs, if they've learned anything, is that you have to protect Patrick Mahomes after we saw what happened in that Super Bowl with Tampa Bay a few years ago. They've done that. They've been incredibly successful, winning the Super Bowl just a few months ago. And I think Anton Harrison is an easy pick here. You could go Darnell Washington, the tight end, if you wanted to spice things up offensively in terms of the downfield playmaking. But I think you take the tackle and you go from there.
Ryan, Rick, Brady, it's been a blast. We will take the rest of this offline. Can't take it to round two, but round one is in the books on this Mock Draft Monday. Fellas, we appreciate the time as always. And don't forget, for all of your draft needs, be sure to download, subscribe, and enjoy to With the First Pick. Ryan, longtime NFL General Manager Rick Spielman, each and every week, deep diving into mock draft, prospect, and position rankings, along with exclusive interviews, and they might agree on a thing or two. It's With the First Pick. Download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.